about the quality mind and cultivating a quality mindset. Before we go too far, I want to give you a little overview of who I am, what I'm about. My name is Gwen Iarussi. I have been in technology and in quality for about 25 years. I have done testing in the edtech, fintech, e-commerce realms. Most recently, I was the director of quality for USANA Health Sciences. I am currently on a self-imposed sabbatical. I'm trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. Chances are it's going to be in the quality realm. But I've been enjoying some time off and spending some time in my garden, doing a little bit of writing, lots of reading. I do have a master's degree in information systems from the University of Utah. And I do spend some time locally in some of our local meetups, groups, testing groups, as well as the Inclusion Project Utah I'm a co-founder of. I was born and raised in Colorado. I've lived in Utah since I was 18. So if you guys do the math, you can figure out how old I am. Mm-hmm. I am a single mom of 2 adult kids, 2 80-pound labs, and a parrot named Matisse. And when I'm not doing testing and talking about testing, I actually spend quite a bit of time doing writing, blogging, and doing photography. So connect with me. I'd love to talk with you. So what I'm hoping, my goals for this session is to give you kind of an overview of some of the quality challenges that we face today. Also, we're going to talk about what a quality mindset is and why it's important today. We're going to talk a little bit about how to build a quality mind. And we're going to talk about some of the outcomes that come from that and some of the impacts that you can have in your local environments. So we'll start by talking a little bit about our current quality landscape today. So we've come a long way. Back in the 80s, development testing, very, very young. Testing was kind of a concept, and it was kind of pulled over from manufacturing, and it was kind of a checkbox at the end of it. So people would code something, throw it over the wall. Testers would kind of test something according to a spec, and then pray, cross fingers, and throw it out there into production. Projects were run very much like, technical projects were run very much like non-technical projects, so very waterfall, long drawn out process. And manual testing kind of ruled the day. It was the only thing at that point. The idea of trying to automate things was not really a reality at that time point. 90s come along, development's getting a little bit more experimental. You get developers talking to one another, talking about better ways of doing things, and so they're starting to collaborate a little bit more, not only with each other, but with their testers. We're starting to talk about automation and some of the automation tools that are coming out. Anybody who was doing testing at that time, automation was really glitchy. You spent almost as much time maintaining your automation as you did actually getting any value out of it. So the focus on testing was primarily manual still. Start of the new millennium, and agile and lean become the buzzwords. When we start talking about delivering faster, responding faster, getting things to market faster. And it's all about speed of delivery, right? You are starting to see more mature automation tools come into play. Teams are starting to understand a little bit more about how to develop, how to build testing into their application platforms. Still mostly manual, because we're not quite sure how to get automation into it. We're not sure how to implement that as part of our quality strategies at that point, because it's still pretty new. And then, the last decade, where rapid delivery is how we do software today. It's all about delivering quickly, it's all about delivering high quality, and getting that value to the customer. We talk a lot about continuous testing and continuous integration, continuous delivery. We're talking about getting quality in sooner, talking about shifting left, right? We hear these buzzwords a lot. Getting those quality feedback loops in quicker, so that at the end of the day, we're delivering high value to our customers when they need it. So, what does this mean for new challenges? It means there's that constant pressure to deliver that high value to the customer and still maintain high quality. It means that we need to build automation with our applications. So it's got to be in lockstep. It's a demand. It's got to happen. Performance, security, accessibility, all these things that were kind of nice to have historically are now core requirements. You look every day, you've got security risks happening to large companies and really hurting their reputations. So anymore, it's just not acceptable to have it as a nice to have. You've got increased application and architectural complexity. We're very service-oriented now. We've got lots of moving pieces, lots of touch points, lots of integrations, both internally and externally. So that adds to that complexity. You've got infrastructure as code now. Everything is software now. So that adds a lot to the scope. It means that changes are happening a lot faster, and keeping tabs on that and being able to include that in our testing scope becomes a lot more complex. You have more complex data sets. You have global markets. Every market having its own context and needs. Lots more customization happening. So all of these things add to the challenge that we have as quality engineers. All right. Well, so let's get cerebral for a minute. You heard Andrew earlier talk a little bit about some of the evolutionary impacts that are impacting us today and impacting the success of our quality of our technical projects. One of the concepts that I want you to take away today, and probably the most important one, is that every one of us in this room possess a computer that is unmatched by any other computer on the planet. Okay? The logic that our minds can do is something that no other computer can do. So when we talk about replacing QA with automation, when we talk about, you know, removing quality engineers from the picture, that's one thing they can't replace. You cannot replace the level of computing that our minds do, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. So we're going to start with an exercise. I want you guys to take some time, give yourself about 20 seconds, and really focus on the cursor in the middle of the screen. And tell me what you observe happens. Don't blink when you do this.
Background fades to uniform.
Fades to black and white, yeah. So this is a visual phenomenon called the Troxler Effect. What this means is that your mind is taking in a ton of data, and because your focus is on that center, it's trying to identify the data that's useful. And so the data that's not useful, it's getting rid of. It's removing from your consciousness. One of the things to keep in mind that we don't think about. So my question is to you is how does this type of phenomenon affect your testing? Think about how this would impact your day-to-day perception and how it could impact your testing. So we are going to talk about a few neuroscience concepts today. We talked a little bit, Andrew did touch on a few of them earlier, but we're going to dig into a little bit more. This is a rabbit hole, so I'm going to precursor this. I'm going to give you a very, very high-level overview, but this is a homework project for you to kind of take home and do some delving in. It's fascinating information. I spent quite a few days when I was researching this topic and went down quite the rabbit hole. But we're going to talk a little bit about fixed versus growth mindset. This is how we perceive ourselves and our abilities and how the impact of that on our overall success and things that we can do in terms of how we approach quality and how we approach these challenges and how we view these challenges and changing our perspective a little bit and how that can help our outcomes. We're going to talk a little bit about pattern learning and patternicity. So our minds are pattern recognition machines. That is what our minds are doing. Not only are we trying to recognize patterns that we can use to make decisions, but we're trying to improve our recognition, right? We're trying to look for signs and rules that help us improve over time, that allow us to make those decisions a lot more quickly. This is all built in. This is not a conscious thing. Our brains are doing this without our conscious knowledge of it. The priming effect is another concept we'll talk about a little bit about today. And this is the phenomenon that our brains are very susceptible to the types of information and stimuli that we bring in. So everything we read, the kind of people we hang out with, the conversations we have, the experiences that we have, all of that is tied back into who we are as testers and who we are as individuals. So those all play a part in who we are as testers. So when we talk about mindset, I'm going to start with Merriam-Webster. Merriam-Webster defines mindset as a mental attitude or inclination or a fixed state of mind. And I'm actually going to remove that second one because it's actually not a fixed state of mind. I think that's kind of a misnomer. The idea that our brains are fixed is not what neuroscience has discovered. In fact, Dr. Dweck was a doctor in the 80s who was in education and did some research around why the difference between students who were being able to recover from failure and really find success versus those who were struggling and having a hard time. And what they found was that the main difference was their mindset, what they believed about their own abilities. So, you know, instead of looking at it and telling these individual children, saying, you know, some people are smarter than others, you just do your best, right? They changed it to, this stuff is hard, and yeah, with some work, you can actually do this, you can accomplish this. But it might take some change of approach, it may take some extra effort. It may not come as easily to you, but we can accomplish this. And so the idea of mindset and the impact that has on our overall success it applies to us today as much as it applies to the education space. I've included some links here to go delve into that a little bit, but I'm not going to get into that. So if you'd like, I'm more than happy to share this deck later, or you can Google this stuff. It's fascinating. I'm also going to give you the additional links here. Again, you can Google all of this. Go out, dig into some of these phenomenons, some of these rules that happen. At the end of the day, what neuroscience has taught us is that each of us brings our unique perspective to the table every single day when we approach testing. Our training, our experiences, everything that we think, everything that guides our thinking is part of that. It influences why we test, it influences how we test, it influences what we test, and even when we test. So our entire perspective of quality is guided by all of the experiences that we've interacted to this point today. It also means that we have the opportunity to take control of that and to grow that and to change and to improve over time. So there's a lot of power in that. We can continue to sharpen our quality minds. Albert Einstein says, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. So that means we've got to do some effort as quality engineers if we're going to have an impact and if we're going to address a lot of these complex challenges that we face today. All right, so how can we do that? Well, it starts with developing quality context, right? We need to understand kind of what quality even is for our different scenarios. Number one, customer journey needs to drive this, right? We should be focusing on our customer first. Who's using our applications? Why are they using it? What are the drivers, the psychological drivers that they are having? What's important to them in those moments when they're sitting down and interacting with our applications? We want to look at our core business priorities. We want to look at our business stakeholders and go and ask what's important to them. What's keeping us in business, right? At the end of the day, if our CTO comes in and says, I need this done, why is that important? Usually it's tied to money, but there are other factors as well. So making sure that we understand kind of what our business is driving toward, what their vision is, what their strategy is, that all should be guiding kind of the things that we put into focus and kind of focus on, keep our tabs on as we're doing testing. We need to understand our technology. I see too often today testing teams who don't understand the infrastructure that they're testing on and don't understand the application architecture, do not understand kind of how the data is flowing through the system, don't understand what it's hosted on. These are all things that help us be better testers. When we understand the technology, we understand how our systems interact with one another and what the dependencies are. You cannot fully assess quality if you don't have that understanding. So get to know, dig in, go talk to your technical people, and build some technology skills. This is going to be key. The other thing is knowing your tool set as testers. So there are lots of methodologies out there. There are lots of ideas. There are lots of tools. It can be dizzying to go out and search just for automation tools because there are so many of them today. But understanding what tools are right for the types of testing that we need is important. Being able to sit down and identify the best tool for the job is key. Just like a carpenter, right? You wouldn't want to use a screwdriver to hammer in a nail. We don't want to use tools just for the sake of using tools. We're here to assess quality, right? We're here to ensure quality. If we're going to do that, we need to be able to know what our toolbox looks like and how to apply those tools. Another thing we can do to sharpen our mind is to commit to continuous learning. Way back when I was first getting into technology, attending a tech school here in Ogden, Utah, my professor sat down and he's like, you know what? Before you get any further down this path, you need to be clear that this is a commitment to lifelong learning. You will be, anytime you think you guys have it figured out, something's going to change and you're going to have to relearn it all over again. And I don't think there is any truer fact that I've experienced in my career. So really committing to that is important. I've added a bunch of different items that you could choose, but there are n number of topics that you could delve into that's going to help your testing context. Systems thinking, going in and understanding how to approach testing from a systems thinking perspective. Design theory, human psychology. We talked a little bit about some of the studies that even hopefully open our minds today about some of our capabilities and some of the things that we struggle with. Learning about our world, understanding cultural impact on our customers and the way that they use our applications. Working for a global company recently, the way that the Chinese check out of applications and go through that retail experience is very, very different from the way Americans do. And so it's really, really important for us to consider the cultural impact of that. So understanding language, understanding some of that cultural impact. And also, understanding disciplines, methods, new ways of looking at things, that always helps. Ultimately, exercising our brain is going to help our brain not only have more context for our testing, but it's also going to help us in our continued learning. And it's going to keep us sharp, and it's going to give us that really good context. And it's going to help prevent some of the logic flaws that come along with some of those anomalies, those mind anomalies that what you discover, some of the cognitive bias that a couple of other people have talked about today. Another thing we want to do is we want to consider different perspectives. So Henry David Thoreau, it's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see. So building our perspective is important to being able to kind of fully assess quality. I've got an exercise. I don't know if anybody's seen this before. This is pretty common, but this is Covey's lady sketch. So I would like to, we've got a small group. What is the age of the woman that you see in this picture?
Are we talking about her age in the picture?
Yeah, just in general. Is she young? Is she old?
Yeah.
Just go ahead and shout out. Is she young or is she older?
There's two of them.
There's two.
Yeah.
Is she young or is she old? She's both.
She was young for a long time.
Who can see? I was gonna say, who sees young? Who was the initial that saw young? Okay, awesome. And then who saw old? You saw both.
Well, yeah.
But you've probably seen
I
this.
saw old and then I saw because you can see.
So both images are in that picture.
But I'm accustomed to see the young first.
Right,
With that
right.
perspective.
Yeah. So whatever you're seeing initially is a byproduct of the stimulus that the pattern recognition that I mentioned earlier, right? It's all that experience that's driving kind of your perception. Who was able to see the other image? Everybody. Oh, that means you guys are awesome. That means you can shift your paradigm, right? So that means that you guys are open to kind of seeing things from a different perspective. This is really hard. In fact, this took me a couple seconds when I first looked at it to kind of, I was aware that there was another image in there, but it took me a couple seconds to kind of shift. That is a skill that will serve us well in testing. We all have different perspectives, and sometimes things aren't as black and white as we may think they are. And there's a lot of value to be gained from considering those other perspectives and kind of seeing the larger picture at play, especially in a quality world. Because when you're dealing with millions of customers, every single one of those customers has a different perspective. And you see that even in your team. So getting to the best solution is often going to be a combination of all of that, and collaboration is really, considering those other perspectives really helps. So when we're looking at a quality perspective, you guys are at a summit today, so you guys get extra points. These types of events are key, right? Getting involved and engaging with your quality community. I have met people from all over the world, and have known some of them for my entire career. Being able to bounce ideas off of them, getting together to talk quality, this is one of the highlights of my year. For those of us who are passionate about this stuff, nothing will revive your dedication and your commitment to this discipline than talking with one another. One other thing, make sure that you don't shy away from tension. There are lots of ideas that you may hear today. If you have other ideas about that and you don't agree with something, go have a conversation. Part of us growing and evolving requires that tension. So we have to embrace that idea of debate again. And that's not something socially that we're very comfortable with today. Societally, we're kind of polarized right now, and we don't do well at kind of coming together and having those conversations. But taking the opportunity to do that, we're gonna learn something we didn't before. And keeping that curiosity is important. There are all kinds of organizations that you can join, software testing organizations, people like us who love to write about testing, love to write about quality. We wax philosophical quite a bit. We tweet about it, we blog about it, we talk about it on the regular, we talk about new tools. There's all kinds of information out there. So go find it. And then bring your own perspective to it. Consider adding to those communities. You want to consider your industry perspective. If you guys are not following your industry, this is one thing that can really help give you better context and better perspective. You should be following it on LinkedIn. Follow the trends. Talk to your internal stakeholders. Make friends with your business side. People inside who are using your applications or supporting customers who are using your applications, and get their perspectives. Look at what your competitors are doing. Very key. Another thing is you want to keep a pulse on your customers. This has got to be at the top. Partnering with your support, customer service teams, getting an idea. Getting an idea of what they're loving about your application, and understanding kind of what their top pain points are, is going to help you figure out where to invest your time from a quality perspective. And make sure you consider that global perspective again, because that's a much more real thing today. So once we've got all of this new mindset, and we're developing our brain, and we're kind of sharpening our perception and our perspectives and our approach to quality, we've got to apply it, right? Because at the end of the day, as Bruce Lee teaches us, knowing is not enough. We have to apply it. Willing is not enough. We must do. We've got to bring our expertise to the table. So that means we got to show up. We've got to start engaging sooner. Get involved in design. If you are not involved in design discussions, if you are not talking to your product owners from the day a requirement is perceived as a requirement, that needs to happen. Start talking to them. Start adding to those conversations. You want to be engineering. So we want to be looking at how we're testing, our methods, our strategies, the types of things that we're testing, and we should be improving that all the time. Engineer better strategies, right? That is the difference between between a tester and an engineer, a quality engineer. You want to be building all the time. You want to be creating precision test plans. You want to be looking at risk and impact of the changes that are happening within your application environment, and making sure that your testing reflects that you're doing the most important testing first. You want to collaborate, working with your larger delivery team. Make sure that you are bouncing ideas. Biggest way to get over that cognitive bias is to be talking to one another and making sure that you're qualifying some of your assumptions. You want to educate. Make quality a shared responsibility. Share how other individuals contributing to that delivery can help, and how you guys can tackle quality issues together. And guys, don't be afraid of those complex problems. Sit down together and start solving some of the things that are plaguing your applications. You guys know what they are, right? You guys have a sense of the biggest pain points from a quality perspective. Start having those conversations and start working together with your development teams to address them. even if it's not today, right? Start the conversation. We want to change the quality narrative. So going back to that fixed versus growth mindset, right? So some of the things that I've heard on teams, I'm going to keep doing what I've always done because it's good enough. We're doing all right. Ultimately, my job is, this is the one that really gets me. Ultimately, my job is to run tests, so I must focus on that. Another one is, I work really hard at my job, so obviously we're putting quality on. I don't have time to spend on learning new ways to test because I'm too busy testing. That's one you hear a lot. I'm just so overwhelmed, and my only option is to work harder. So that's a very fixed mindset. So instead, if you look at the growth section, one of the immediate things that changes is that all of those become questions, right? You up your curiosity. So, what questions haven't I asked? What do I not know? How can I improve my testing? How can we test smarter instead of harder? Where's the greatest impact, the greatest risk? Ultimately, our job is not to test, guys. Our job is to assure quality, right? Testing is just the means to an end. How can I adapt my approach? How can I change the way I'm thinking about my testing so that I get better outcomes? All of these things we can come into every single day. Every day we can go in and start our day with, what is the most important testing that I can do today? Where's the biggest risk today? These can really turn around your quality outcomes. Just that one thing. Another reminder, we want to act with intention. I think one of the things that we struggle with in quality is we kind of get set in our day-to-day. We start, relying on the test cases that we have to run, and we test the same way every single day. And I'll tell you right now, one of the most dangerous things we can do as quality practitioners is to be in that autopilot mode. Is to be doing the same thing we did last release. If your testing does not change every single release, then you are part of the problem when it comes to quality. You are creating quality problems. So keep that in mind. If you're not acting with an intention, it's a chance for you to kind of build some awareness around it. So, start with a plan, right? I mean, we've all seen this. This is where we start. This is part of core software delivery. You start with clearly articulated and agreed upon goals. You create a plan for those. You execute on that, and you adapt. We all know this. This is part of our everyday, right? But taking that to the next level is understanding what we're doing and why it's important. And being able to articulate that is key. If someone comes up and asks you why you're approaching a certain problem a certain way, or why you're testing something a certain way, or what your approach to testing is, and you don't have an answer for them, if you can't articulate that, then you have no business doing that testing, because you're just going through the motions at that point. You're not really sure why you're doing it. Make sure that we're overcoming that cognitive bias. It impacts everything we do, guys. It's a reality. There are logic flaws that come with some of these supercomputer techniques that we have in our brains. They do lead us astray. That pattern recognition, I mean, you hear these stories, right, of people finding Jesus in their cup of coffee. You hear people going down rabbit holes for conspiracy theories and buying into things that have no basis in fact at all, but because of their patterns, they're trying to find meaning, right? We're constantly trying to find meaning. And because of that can be a flaw in the way that we make decisions and the way we approach testing. So avoiding that. There are ways to avoid it. We can acknowledge it, raise our awareness around it, know that this is a part of us. We can challenge our own confidence. You guys heard that Andrew talk a little bit about this morning, but what he was referring to is called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which means the less you know about something, the more confident you are. So if you're feeling really confident about something, chances are you need to ask more questions. So being aware of that, going back and going, hey, you know what? I'm going to challenge my own assumptions on this. It can be very powerful. Avoiding that autopilot testing mode. If you're not thinking about what you're doing and you can't answer the question of why, check yourself. Rely on more data. Use the metrics, guys. You guys get data all the time. There should be metrics. There should be things that should point you into the directions of where things are going wrong. Use that data and use it to continuously improve. And collaborate, bounce ideas off each other. All ways to overcome that. Most importantly, get comfortable being uncomfortable. Guys, our job is not comfortable. And as leaders, I will tell you, it is not our jobs to make you comfortable, because if you're comfortable, you become a risk to quality. We got to be on it. We got to be bringing our A game. We've got to be evolving with the applications that we're putting out there. So embrace that tension, leave your ego at the door, and start having those hard conversations. So once you get all this done, we want to scale this, right? We want to take this to our teams. So how do we collectively evolve? Well, that's where it gets a little tricky, because culture is tough to change. It takes time. So make sure we're leading by example. Make sure we're transparent, right? Make sure we're articulating what we're doing and why. Tell your developers, tell your product owners, make sure that's part of your planning. Be clear on how you're going to tackle this stuff. Make sure that you're collectively owning failure and celebrating your success together. Have fun. We should be making testing fun again. This is a really, really awesome place to be. And it challenges our brains in ways that other disciplines don't. So enjoy it, get passionate about it. Formalize through centers of excellence. Once you've got something going well, you can start tackling some of those harder problems by getting some of the great minds in a room together and start tackling them one by one, kind of holding each other accountable to those outcomes. And then commit to that continuous improvement. Make that a part of your core value set. So at the end of the day, what we're shooting for, the end game, the mecca, there isn't one. Things are going to continue to evolve. They're going to continue to shift. But some of the things that you're going to get that increased value for your customer. It's going to happen. You're going to get that superior user experience and more usable applications that evolve with your customers. You're going to get increased speed of delivery without sacrificing quality. You're going to get reduction of those testing bottlenecks, because you're going to be focusing on the right testing at the right time, and you're going to be removing some of that waste. You're going to get that continuous evolution. And hopefully, if we do things right, we maintain sanity along the way, although that is probably debatable, because, yeah, I question it daily. But enjoy your journey. Everybody's journey is unique. Enjoy learning about yourself, and bring your A game, guys, because it's an exciting world out there, and we have lots more challenges to conquer together. So that's all I have. Thank you all for your time today.